Hi everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my VermiBag Mini preparing to feed this lovely assortment of cauliflower leaves and strawberries to the red wigglers that live in this VermiBag Mini. This VermiBag Mini, as of today, has reached 200 days in service, so happy 200th day in service. We checked in here only 10 days ago. So we're using the 200th day in service as sort of an excuse to come in a little sooner than we normally would. Because after 10 days, we would normally be checking in on other systems and not worrying so much about how things are doing in here. But I've been curious, ever since the last check-in, what our next visit to these little guys would be like. Because of the unusual way that we delivered them their feeding last time. Because last time we unearthed these gourds that are in here, and here's one of them, and we stuffed them. We stuffed the insides of these gourds with a whole bunch of cantaloupe melon rinds, and I thought to myself, hey, if we got back here soon enough, we might end up finding a nice little worm party within these gourds. But that first one that we just excavated and checked on didn't really yield much of a worm party, but this one looks pretty interesting. A lot of worms came out to hang out on this gourd. And where's the opening? The opening's right here. One of them we found a little bit late in the game after we had already stuffed all the there we go. After we had stuffed all the the cantaloupe melon rinds into the gourds. So that one was sort of like a control to the test, if you want to consider it as a test. And instead of putting melon rinds into the gourd, we stuffed one of these full of just shredded paper cardboard, my prepared bedding mix, to see how it's received compared to the other gourds, which were all stuffed with yummy melon. Oh boy. This, I believe, is the biggest one here, which has the largest size cavity, which looks like it's jammed full of castings. So we'll do what we normally do, is we attempt to dislodge its contents and shake it loose. Here too I find a whole bunch of cantaloupe melon rind, which has been stripped clean of its yummy, fruity goodness. And the worms will eventually break all of it down, but it's not surprising that they've nibbled off all of the sweet, yummy stuff. And you know what I did was I took this stuff right here out of the freezer, I don't know, almost an hour ago, in the hopes that perhaps it would thaw out enough that we'd be able to once again load up these gourds, assuming that the outcome of this previous attempt at doing it this way was interesting enough that we would want to try to repeat it. Now this piece of gourd, I've definitely had trouble dislodging the contents of. Perhaps just because of its narrow shape, perhaps because its contents are just jammed in there so tight. I don't know exactly what the reason is. But it's not terribly important that we empty it. Although it does seem like a little bit of a challenge at this point, so here we go. Look at all the little worms jammed in there. What I just pulled out before was another chunk of the cantaloupe melon rind. We've just done a number on this one piece here by chipping off as much as we did. We've taken a great deal of its overall size and reduced it. And sorry, worms, I just find myself challenged by something like this, and I can't resist trying to meet the challenge and see if I can empty it, as I've been trying to during a couple visits. But look at all those worms down in there, all the way down within the gourd. I don't think we're going to get them out. Unless they're so annoyed by me being a pest that they just come out on their own. So whatever, I'm just having a little bit too much fun here. So why don't we proceed with trying to scrounge up the last of whatever it is that we have down here as far as old leftover pieces of gourd and pumpkin stems. That's what we see here. This is the biggest of all the pumpkin stems. And when these little wormies were placed in here out of their previous homes, which were my yellow buckets, I had simply emptied the yellow buckets, meaning all the finished castings that the worms had produced in their yellow buckets came with them. And the other thing that came with them were a number of pumpkin stems. In most of the systems there was 2 smaller little pumpkin stems about that size, but I believe it was bucket number 1 was the one into which we placed this largest of all the pumpkin stems. And I believe we've even proceeded to helping some of these pumpkin stems break down by trying to chip them apart into little pieces when we encounter them here and there. But there is going to be one pumpkin stem that's going to be a little bit tougher than the rest, and it's the one that was put in here after the worms were launched into this bag. Because through this little view window that you see here, it's a clear plastic sheet with a flap on the outside to keep things dark in here. I actually set up a camera on the other side of that thing to shoot an entire little pumpkin that was placed into here to break down, and then the stem was included, and this could very well be the stem from that pumpkin. I don't remember. But even though the other ones have had many, many months of advantage in terms of head start on breaking down over the one that was put in here for the time lapse that I shot, even this one, I'm sure I'd have no problem breaking this apart if I tried. It does feel quite soft as I press on it, but it almost feels like with this one I just want to let it go on its own because it's so interesting, because it's so big. So here we go. Let's proceed with what we intended to do here, which was to see if these chunks of food have softened up sufficiently that I can once again jam them down into these gourds so that the worms are motivated to crawl around inside the gourd and help break it down perhaps a little bit more quickly than if it was placed in here hollow and empty. So I think that if we stuff some yummy strawberry and cabbage down into these things, then perhaps we can get the worms to do our bidding a little bit more quickly than they would otherwise. And go in there after the food. And then, oops, well, I just put a huge crack into this thing. I've kind of opened the whole thing up, but it's still holding together. But whatever, these things are not intended to last forever, that's for sure. When you put stuff into your worm bins, most people will agree that the whole reason, the whole idea, is that the worms are supposed to work this stuff down for you and break it down into compost. We're not supposed to have stuff that just sits around forever. So there we go. 3 of the gourds were still holding together well enough that I was able to stuff things into it. And with this one, I don't know, I just think I would feel bad putting a frozen object in there on top of those little guys. They just have no way to escape. And then I would just feel bad if that was going to cause them any sort of discomfort or harm, so I'm not going to do that. I've been coming in here with pretty much my prepared bedding lately, but I kind of felt like I was neglecting my collection of leaves from outside, so I thought that maybe I would get this thing off the shelf and put it to good use, because it just seems like I haven't used leaves in any of my feedings for so long. So I'm getting the old leaves out again, which for the longest time always used to be like my default bedding material around here. And that was until I got myself a couple really nice shredders, and now I collect paper and cardboard and look forward to the next opportunity to break out my shredders and prepare shredded paper and cardboard for my prepared bedding mix. Then I even keep dry shredded paper and cardboard around just in case I need dry bedding for certain instances when things seem a little bit too damp, and I'd prefer to use dry bedding to see if I can soak some of it up. And I really like the way moisture looks in here. We did kind of end the last check-in in such a way that we came in here with my squirt bottle and very generously applied a good bit of moisture into here. I mean, we just sprayed and sprayed and sprayed. And then we covered with plastic. So that's the one thing I usually do before I start rolling is I remove the top covering plastic. But that top covering of plastic does go all the way from edge to edge. A little chunk of plastic snuck in here somehow. I'm glad I caught it. So I do position that top covering of plastic in such a way that it tries to limit the evaporation of moisture out of the system. And it does seem to do a pretty good job, but I believe that it is the fabric bag, which is designed to be breathable, so it's allowing air to flow through it to a certain degree, intentionally by design, to give the worms a nice steady supply of oxygen that they certainly need in their bedding to remain healthy and happy. But I guess one of the side effects is that this stuff does get a little bit dry out here around the edges. I mean, I do have, I mean, you can even see it here. I've got some plastic that I wrapped around the outside of the bag, but it doesn't reach down very low. It only comes down to about here. So, unfortunately, the material that's just below the surface here is not really protected from airflow. And perhaps I can come back on here with a little bit of additional, just a little bit of additional plastic to help prevent further moisture loss through the sides of the bag. So that's a little something I might do at one point. Because it's winter time, and during the winter time, when my furnace is running, it has this tendency to dry the air out in the house considerably. And when the air is dry, it's just going to suck moisture out of things that do have moisture content to them. I mean, it wasn't terribly bad, and even when we pulled some of it up and out, we did see worms hanging out there. Not right in the driest stuff, but pretty close to it. So, in the wintertime, I'm generally looking for ways to guard my VermiBags from losing too much moisture through the fabric to the dry air in the house, but that's part of the reason we're compensating with my little sprayer here, and then guarding against further drying by covering with plastic. So we don't have to go too crazy with it. I think what we've done right there is sufficient, you know, bringing up some of the dry stuff to the surface so we can dampen it. And you know what? I had my bedding here, not bedding, my grit on the standby, ready to go. I thought I'd apply it with the feeding, but I forgot, so let's give them some anyway. They'll have a tendency to come to the surface anyhow, so we'll just leave it out there for them and they can come get it from there. So that's it for our check-in. Let's bring back the top covering just so you can see it. Even though it wasn't here when we started, we can certainly show what it looks like here at the end, and you can see how I'll even tuck it in a little bit just to try to limit airflow hitting the top surface as much as possible to keep things nice and damp and cozy. And who knows, maybe I'll just come back in here and sort of expand the covering that goes around the edge to guard against drying, to see if we can further protect the system from drying. But as you can see, things are happy and healthy down here. It's only around the edges, and perhaps it's not even an issue. So that's it for our video, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. It's always really appreciated, and if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.